The morning sun cast a warm glow over the Garden View Resort, where Sarah Miller stood in front of a full-length mirror, admiring her white wedding dress. At 32, she never thought she'd get a second chance at love, especially after her first marriage ended in divorce when her daughter Emma was just 2 years old. The bridal suite buzzed with activity as the makeup artist added finishing touches to Sarah's face, while her best friend Lisa adjusted the veil. In the corner of the room, 8-year-old Emma twirled in her light pink flower girl dress, making the tall skirt float around her like a cloud. "Mommy, do I look pretty?" Emma asked, her blue eyes sparkling with excitement. She had been looking forward to this day ever since James proposed to her mother 6 months ago. Sarah smiled at her daughter through the mirror. "You look beautiful, sweetheart. Just be careful not to wrinkle your dress before the ceremony." The past 2 years have been like a dream for Sarah. Meeting James Thompson at a local coffee shop had changed everything. He was successful, charming, and most importantly, he seemed to adore Emma. As a real estate agent, he had a flexible schedule that allowed him to attend Emma's school events and even helped her with homework sometimes. A knock on the door interrupted Sarah's thoughts. Her mother, Barbara, peeked in, her eyes immediately welling up with tears. "Oh, honey, you look absolutely stunning." She walked over to hug her daughter carefully, trying not to disturb the perfectly arranged dress. The bridal suite overlooked the garden where workers were putting final touches on the decoration. White chairs were lined up in neat rows, with pink and white roses adorning the aisle. The arch at the altar was covered in fresh flowers, and soft music played through strategically placed speakers. Sarah's heart fluttered as she thought about the 150 guests who would soon fill those chairs. Many had traveled from different states to attend the wedding. James's family had come all the way from Boston, including his parents, 3 siblings, and various aunts and uncles. "It's almost time," Lisa announced, checking her watch. "The guests are starting to arrive." Emma bounced over to the window, pressing her face against the glass. "I can see Uncle Mike parking his car, and there's James's sister with her husband." Sarah took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. Everything was perfect: the weather, the venue, her dress, and even Emma's excitement about gaining a new father. James had promised to always treat Emma as his own daughter, and so far, he had kept that promise. The wedding planner, Mrs. Rodriguez, entered the room with a clipboard in hand. 30 minutes until showtime, everyone. "Emma, sweetie, remember what we practiced at the rehearsal. You'll walk slowly down the aisle, dropping rose petals as you go." Emma nodded seriously, clutching her white basket filled with pink rose petals. "I know, Mrs. Rodriguez. I practiced in my room all week." The atmosphere in the room grew more excited as the minutes ticked by. Sarah's bridesmaids arrived in their matching dusty rose dresses, carrying bouquets of white roses and baby's breath. They fussed over Sarah's train and helped Emma practice her flower girl walk one last time. Through the window, Sarah could see James arriving with his groomsmen, all dressed in black tuxedos with pink rose boutonnieres. He looked handsome and confident, greeting guests with his characteristic charm. From this distance, she could see him checking his phone frequently, probably nervous about the ceremony, she thought. 5 minutes, everyone. Mrs. Rodriguez called out. "Bridesmaids and flower girl, please line up in the hallway." Barbara helped Sarah with one final check in the mirror. The ivory dress hugged her curves perfectly before flowing out into a modest train. Her dark hair was styled in elegant waves under the veil, and her makeup enhanced her natural beauty without being too heavy. "Ready, sweetheart?" Barbara asked, squeezing her daughter's hand. Sarah nodded, her heart racing with anticipation. Everything she had dreamed of was about to become reality. She had found a man who not only loved her but was willing to be a father to Emma. Their small family would finally be complete. As they left the bridal suite, Sarah watched Emma skipping ahead with her basket of petals, completely unaware that this perfect day would soon turn into something none of them could have ever imagined. The ceremony was scheduled to begin at 2:00 p.m. sharp. As guests settled into their seats, the string quartet began playing soft classical music. The garden venue looked magical, with sunlight filtering through the trees and a gentle breeze carrying the sweet scent of roses. James stood at the altar, fidgeting with his bow tie. His best man, Robert, noticed his friend's unusual restlessness and whispered, "Everything okay, man?" "Yeah, just want everything to be perfect," James replied, checking his phone again. This was his third time looking at it in the past 5 minutes. From the back of the garden, Mrs. Rodriguez began organizing the wedding party for their entrance. Emma stood first in line, holding her basket of rose petals. She couldn't contain her excitement and kept practicing her petal throwing technique, despite the wedding planner's gentle reminders to save the petals for the actual walk. "Emma, sweetheart, please stand still," Mrs. Rodriguez said, trying to keep her voice patient. "We don't want to run out of petals before you reach the altar." The music changed, signaling the start of the procession. As Emma began her walk down the aisle, guests smiled and whispered about how adorable she looked. She took her role very seriously, carefully dropping petals as she practiced. However, her excitement got the better of her, and she started adding little twirls between steps. James' expression tightened slightly at Emma's embellishments to her walk. His mother, seated in the front row, frowned at the child's behavior. Several guests noticed James's jaw clench, but they attributed it to normal wedding day nerves. The bridesmaids followed, walking gracefully down the aisle. Lisa, as maid of honor, gave Emma a gentle pat on the shoulder as she passed her. The little girl had reached the front but continued to sway and dance slightly to the music. "Stand still," James mouthed to Emma, his eyes narrowing. The little girl tried to comply but couldn't help shifting from foot to foot. Just then, Sarah appeared at the end of the aisle. The guests rose, turning to watch the bride. She looked radiant, her smile bright as she held onto her father's arm. However, her joy faltered slightly when she noticed James's tense expression. As Sarah made her way down the aisle, Emma's excitement bubbled over again. She started making small bouncing movements, her shoes clicking against the wooden platform. The sound seemed to echo in James's ears, and his face grew increasingly red. Robert noticed James's growing agitation and tried to distract him by whispering, "Sarah looks beautiful, doesn't she?" But James's attention remained fixed on Emma, who was now humming softly along with the music. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he discreetly tried to check it while the officiant began speaking. This movement caught Emma's attention, and she turned to watch him curiously. "Today we gather to celebrate the union of James Thompson and Sarah Miller," the officiant began. The words were barely out of his mouth when Emma accidentally knocked her flower basket against one of the large decorative vases filled with water and flowers. The vase wobbled precariously. Emma tried to steady it, but her movement only made things worse. Water sloshed over the side, creating a small puddle on the platform. A few guests gasped softly. James's phone buzzed again. His face had turned an even darker shade of red, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the mild temperature. Sarah noticed his strange behavior and felt a growing sense of unease. Emma, now anxious about the water spill, started shifting more noticeably. Her patent leather shoes squeaked on the wet wood. The officiant paused, waiting for the minor disruption to settle. "Sorry," Emma whispered, loud enough for the first few rows to hear. Time seemed to slow down as Emma, trying to regain her balance, stumbled backward into another decorative vase. This one tipped over with a loud crash, shattering on the wooden platform. The sound echoed through the garden, causing several guests to jump in their seats. In that split second, something in James snapped. His face contorted with rage, and before anyone could react, he spun around and struck Emma across the face with an open palm. The sound of the slap cut through the air like a whip. A collective gasp rose from the guests. Emma's small body stumbled backward from the force of the blow, her blue eyes wide with shock and pain. Her hand slowly rose to her reddening cheek as tears welled up in her eyes. "Can't you behave for one damn minute?" James shouted, his voice unrecognizable with anger. His phone buzzed again in his pocket, and he appeared even more agitated. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, her bouquet slipping from her fingers and falling to the ground. The white roses scattered across the platform, mixing with the spilled water and broken glass. The string quartet abruptly stopped playing, leaving an eerie silence broken only by Emma's soft whimpers. Mrs. Rodriguez was the first to move, rushing forward to reach Emma, but Sarah suddenly snapped out of her shock. She lunged forward, her white dress billowing around her as she pushed past James to reach her daughter. "Don't you dare touch my child." Sarah's voice rang out, fierce and protective as she gathered Emma in her arms. The little girl buried her face in her mother's wedding dress, her small body shaking with sobs. James seemed to realize what he had done. His face drained of color, and he took a step toward them. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Stay away from us. Sarah's command was sharp and clear. Her father had already reached the platform, positioning himself between James and his daughter and granddaughter. The guests sat in stunned silence, many with their hands covering their mouths in horror. James's mother stood up, her face flushed with embarrassment. He's just stressed, she tried to explain, but her words were met with angry murmurs from the crowd. Lisa, the maid of honor, quickly moved to shield Sarah and Emma, while Robert grabbed James's arm, pulling him back. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Robert hissed, his face showing disgust at his friend's actions. Emma lifted her tear-stained face from her mother's dress. A bright red handprint was visible on her cheek, and a small trickle of blood ran from where James's ring had caught her skin. The sight of blood caused another wave of gasps from the guests. "Mommy, I'm sorry about the vase," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to ruin everything." Sarah's heart broke at her daughter's words. She kissed Emma's forehead, her own tears now falling freely. "You didn't ruin anything, baby. You did nothing wrong. Nothing." James's phone buzzed yet again, and in his agitated state, he pulled it out. Several people nearby could see the screen light up with a message that read, "Where are you? I'm waiting." The name at the top of the message was Melissa. One of the bridesmaids saw the message and gasped, "He's been texting another woman during the ceremony." This revelation sent another shockwave through the crowd. Sarah's brother Mike had now reached the platform and was rolling up his sleeves, his face dark with anger. "You hit my niece, and you're texting another woman at your own wedding." The situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. Mrs. Rodriguez was trying to maintain order while simultaneously calling security. Guests were standing up, some moving toward the exits, others approaching the platform with various expressions of concern and anger. Through it all, Sarah remained focused solely on her daughter. She looked down at Emma's frightened face and made a decision that would change their lives forever. With a clear, steady voice that carried across the garden, she announced, "The wedding is off. I will never let anyone hurt my child." As the chaos continued to unfold around them, Sarah held Emma tightly, knowing that while this day had turned into a nightmare, her choice to protect her daughter was the only one that mattered. The perfect wedding had become a disaster, but it had revealed a truth that would save them from what could have been years of hidden abuse. The garden erupted into chaos. Sarah's brother Mike lunged at James, only to be held back by two groomsmen. "You piece of garbage," he shouted, struggling against their grip. "How dare you hit my niece?" Sarah's father, a usually calm man, stepped closer to James. "I suggest you leave now," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Before I forget I'm a gentleman." James stood his ground, still trying to salvage the situation. "Everyone's overreacting. She was disrupting the whole ceremony. I was just disciplining her." "Disciplining her?" Sarah's voice cut through the commotion like ice. She had wrapped her veil around Emma to comfort her, not caring that her carefully styled hair was now falling around her face. "She's an 8-year-old child at a wedding, not your property to discipline." Barbara, Sarah's mother, had made her way to the platform and was examining Emma's cheek. The mark had begun to bruise, and the small cut from James's ring looked angry and red. "We need to document this," she whispered to Sarah, "and get it cleaned up." Meanwhile, James's family was creating their own scene. His mother stood up, pointing her finger at Emma. "That child has been poorly behaved all day. James was just trying to maintain order at his own wedding. Are you seriously defending him hitting a child?" Lisa stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "What kind of people are you?" The wedding guests had divided into clear groups. Most were gathering around Sarah and Emma, forming a protective circle, while a small contingent of James's family tried to defend his actions. The rest of the guests stood in shocked clusters, whispering and recording the scene on their phones. Mrs. Rodriguez had finally reached security on her phone. "Yes, we need assistance immediately," she was saying. "The groom has assaulted the flower girl, the bride's daughter." James's phone buzzed again. This time, Sarah caught a glimpse of another message from Melissa. "The hotel room won't wait forever." The pieces suddenly fell into place, his agitation, the constant phone checking, his unusual anger. "You were planning to meet someone else today, weren't you?" Sarah's question silenced the crowd. "On our wedding day?" James's face turned pale. He opened his mouth to respond, but but no words came out. His silence was confirmation enough. Emma, still trembling in her mother's arms, looked up at Sarah. "Can we go home, Mommy, please?" Those simple words from her daughter cleared Sarah's mind completely. Nothing else mattered, not the expensive venue, not the guests, not the months of planning, and certainly not James or his excuses. "Yes, baby, we're leaving right now." Sarah turned to her parents. "Mom, Dad, can you help me get Emma out of here?" Barbara quickly gathered Emma into her arms while Sarah's father positioned himself between them and James. Lisa started organizing the bridesmaids to collect Sarah and Emma's belongings from the bridal suite. As they began to move away, James made one last attempt to approach them. "Sarah, please, we can talk about this. I lost my temper, but I love you both." "Love?" Sarah turned back to face him, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "Love doesn't leave bruises on children. Love doesn't include secret messages to another woman on your wedding day. You don't love us. You just love the idea of controlling us." Security finally arrived, two uniformed men quickly assessing the situation. Mrs. Rodriguez pointed them toward James, who was still trying to follow Sarah. "Sir, you need to step back," one of the security guards said firmly, placing himself between James and the departing bride. As Sarah and her family made their way down the aisle, many guests stood up, some applauding her decision, others reaching out to touch her arm in support. The string quartet, who had remained silent since the incident, began to play again, not the wedding march, but a gentle, soothing melody that seemed to strengthen Sarah's steps. Just before they reached the garden exit, Emma whispered something that made Sarah's heart both break and swell with pride. "You're the bravest mommy in the world." Sarah hugged her daughter closer, knowing that while this day hadn't turned out as planned, it had shown her something far more important than a perfect wedding. It had shown her the perfect clarity of a mother's love and the strength to protect what truly mattered. The aftermath of James's violent outburst unfolded in waves of chaos throughout the Garden View Resort. In the parking lot, Sarah's family had formed a protective circle around her and Emma as they made their way to Barbara's car. The little girl was still wrapped in her mother's veil, her flower girl dress wrinkled and tear-stained. Inside the venue, the situation had devolved into a heated confrontation. James's family was now in a full-blown argument with several of Sarah's relatives. His mother, red-faced and defensive, continued to justify her son's actions. "This wouldn't have happened if that child had proper discipline at home," she shouted, pointing an accusing finger at Sarah's retreating figure. Mike, Sarah's brother, had finally broken free from the groomsman's grip. "Proper discipline. Your son was texting his girlfriend during his own wedding ceremony. What kind of discipline did you teach him?" The revelation about Melissa spread through the crowd like wildfire. Several guests who had attended James' previous work events began sharing stories they previously kept quiet. A colleague's wife mentioned seeing James and Melissa together at restaurants. Another guest recalled suspicious interactions at office parties. Meanwhile, Mrs. Rodriguez was dealing with multiple crises at once. She had called the police to file a report about the assault, directed the catering staff to stop food preparation, and was trying to manage the increasingly hostile atmosphere between the two families. The wedding photographer, who had captured the entire incident on camera, quietly approached Lisa. "I have everything documented," she whispered. "Clear shots of him hitting Emma and the aftermath. Tell Sarah I'll send them to her. She might need them." Outside, Barbara had taken charge of the situation. She sat in the back seat of her car with Emma, carefully cleaning the cut on her cheek with a first aid kit she kept in her purse. Sarah, still in her wedding dress, sat on the other side of Emma, holding her daughter's hand. "It stings, Grandma," Emma whimpered as Barbara applied antiseptic. "I know, sweetheart. Just a little more," Barbara soothed, her hands gentle but her eyes fierce with anger at what had happened to her granddaughter. Sarah's father paced outside the car, talking on his phone with their family lawyer. "Yes, we need an emergency restraining order. No, we can't wait until Monday. He struck her hard enough to draw blood." The sound of raised voices drew closer as James pushed past the security guards and burst into the parking lot. His tie was askew, and his face was flushed with a mixture of anger and panic. "Sarah, you can't just leave like this," he shouted. "What about all the money we spent? What about our house? What about my daughter?" Sarah's voice carried across the parking lot as she stepped out of the car, her wedding dress catching the afternoon sun. What about the trust you shattered? What about the fact that you were planning to meet another woman today? Several guests had followed the commotion outside and now stood watching the confrontation. James's phone buzzed yet again, and in his agitation, he pulled it out. The movement was so automatic, so telling of his priorities, that Sarah actually laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Check your message, James," she said coldly. "Melissa's waiting, and she can have you." The distant sound of police sirens cut through the tension. James's face changed from anger to fear as he realized the severity of his situation. His best man, Robert, who had followed him outside, grabbed his arm. "You need to leave now," Robert urged, looking disgusted. "You've done enough damage." Inside the car, Emma had curled up against her mother's side, her small body exhausted from crying. She looked up at Sarah with swollen eyes. "Are we still going to live in the new house with him?" Sarah stroked her daughter's hair, her decision crystallizing with perfect clarity. "No, baby. We're going to stay with Grandma and Grandpa for a while. Then we'll find our own special place, just you and me." As the police cars pulled into the parking lot, Sarah held her daughter close, knowing that while this day had started as her wedding day, it had become something far more important. The day she chose her daughter's safety and happiness over everything else. The day she showed Emma that love means protection, not pain. The day they both learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. The news spread through their small town of Millbrook like a wildfire. By Sunday morning, less than 24 hours after the incident, nearly everyone had heard about what happened at the Garden View Resort. The local coffee shop buzzed with conversations about the wedding that wasn't, and phones lit up with messages and social media updates. Sarah and Emma spent the night at Barbara and John's house, where Emma slept fitfully, occasionally waking up crying. Sarah sat by her daughter's bed all night, watching the bruise on her cheek darken, her heart breaking with each whimper. Early Sunday morning, Sarah's phone began ringing nonstop. Local news outlets had picked up the story, especially after several wedding guests had posted videos of the incident online. Some clips showed James striking Emma, while others captured his mother's shocking defense of his actions. "Turn it off," Barbara advised, taking Sarah's phone and setting it aside. "The police have his statement, we have the photos, and right now, Emma needs you more than anyone else needs information." The support from the community was overwhelming. By noon, their front porch was filled with flowers, cards, and small gifts for Emma. Sarah's former clients from her teaching job at Millbrook Elementary sent messages of support. Parents of Emma's classmates organized a meal train, ensuring they wouldn't have to worry about cooking for the next few weeks. The local domestic violence organization, Safe Haven, reached out through Lisa. Their director, Maria Santos, wanted to offer free counseling services for both Sarah and Emma. "We've seen this pattern before," Maria explained during their phone call. "The isolation, the control, the explosion of violence. You're not alone." Meanwhile, James's carefully constructed image was crumbling. His real estate office placed him on immediate administrative leave. His country club membership was suspended. Former clients began calling his office, requesting different agents. His professional reputation, built over a decade, was dissolving in a matter of days. More disturbing information emerged about James's relationship with Melissa Carter, his assistant. Several of his colleagues came forward, revealing they had suspected the affair for months but feared speaking up. The hotel room James had booked for his wedding night was discovered to have been reserved under Melissa's name. Emma's school principal, Dr. Anderson, visited them personally on Sunday afternoon. "Emma's safety is our priority," she assured Sarah. "We've already alerted all staff members. James has been removed from the approved pickup list, and we've increased security at all entrances." The local police detective assigned to their case, Detective Martinez, called with an update. "We're taking this very seriously," she said. "The video evidence is compelling, and multiple witnesses have given statements. We're also investigating some concerning previous incidents that have come to light." By Sunday evening, a small group of protesters had gathered outside James's house, holding signs that read "Child abusers have no place here" and "Protect our children." Local news vans parked nearby, their cameras recording as James's mother tried to defend him to reporters. "It's been blown out of proportion," she insisted to the cameras. James is a respected member of this community. One mistake shouldn't define him. Her words backfired spectacularly. Within hours, the community's response grew stronger. The Millbrook Women's Association, where James's mother held a leadership position, asked for her resignation. The organization also announced a fundraiser to benefit Safe Haven in Emma's name. Sarah watched all this unfold from the safety of her parents' home, feeling both overwhelmed and grateful for the support. Emma had spent the day curled up on the couch, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit, while a steady stream of visitors brought comfort and encouragement. "Mommy," Emma said quietly that evening, as they sat together looking at the cards and messages of support. "Everyone is being so nice to us." Sarah hugged her daughter close, careful to avoid the bruised cheek that now served as a visible reminder of their narrow escape. "That's because they know what happened was wrong, sweetheart. And they want to help make sure we're okay." As the sun set on that Sunday, Sarah realized that while her wedding day had turned into a nightmare, it had also revealed the true character of their community. In the face of violence and betrayal, they had chosen to stand with a mother and her daughter, showing that sometimes the worst moments can bring out the best in people. The story was far from over, but for the first time since the incident, Sarah felt something besides fear and anger. She felt hope. By Monday morning, the legal machinery was in full motion. Sarah sat in her lawyer's office, a thick folder of evidence spread across the desk. Attorney Rachel Bennett, a family law specialist, reviewed the photographs, videos, and witness statements with growing concern. "The evidence is overwhelming," Rachel said, pointing to the clear images the wedding photographer had provided. "Not only do we have the assault documented, but the text messages to Melissa prove premeditation of infidelity. This strengthens our case significantly." Detective Martinez arrived at the office with new information. Her investigation had uncovered a disturbing pattern in James's past. Two former girlfriends had come forward with stories of controlling behavior and angry outbursts, though none had previously filed charges. "We've also discovered something concerning about his business practices," Detective Martinez explained. "Several clients have reported aggressive behavior when deals didn't go his way. One elderly couple filed a complaint last year about feeling intimidated into a sale." While Sarah dealt with the legal proceedings, Emma stayed home from school, the bruise on her face still too visible to face her classmates. The school counselor, Mrs. Chen, made a house call to begin working with Emma on processing the trauma. "Emma's showing remarkable resilience," Mrs. Chen told Sarah privately, "but she's carrying a lot of guilt, thinking she ruined your wedding. We need to help her understand that none of this was her fault." James' attempts to contact Sarah continued, switching between angry demands and tearful apologies. His text messages ranged from "you're destroying my life" to "please, I'll get help, just give me another chance." Sarah forwarded each message to her lawyer without responding. The district attorney's office moved quickly, taking the case seriously due to the public nature of the assault and the victim's age. By Wednesday, they had filed criminal charges against James for child abuse and assault. "We're also investigating the financial aspects," the DA's assistant informed Sarah. "The evidence suggests he was misusing company resources to facilitate his affair with Ms. Carter." James' real estate firm conducted their own internal investigation, uncovering a pattern of expense account abuse and questionable transactions. By the end of the week, they had terminated his employment and issued a public statement distancing themselves from his actions. Melissa Carter, the woman James had been texting during the ceremony, finally broke her silence. She contacted Sarah's lawyer, offering to testify about James's history of manipulative behavior. "He told me you knew about us," Melissa wrote in a sworn statement. "He said you were fine with it, that your marriage was just for show. I feel horrible about believing him." The judge reviewing the case granted an immediate temporary restraining order protecting both Sarah and Emma. The order prohibited James from coming within 500 feet of their home, Emma's school, or Sarah's workplace. "This is just the beginning," Rachel advised Sarah. "We're building a strong case for a permanent order of protection. His behavior shows a clear pattern of escalation that the court takes very seriously." During a preliminary hearing, James's lawyer attempted to downplay the incident, describing it as a momentary lapse in judgment due to wedding day stress. The judge was unimpressed, especially after viewing the wedding video. "Mr. Thompson," the judge said sternly, "stress does not excuse violence against a child. This court takes a very dim view of your actions. Emma's pediatrician documented the healing bruise and cut, adding photos to the growing file of evidence. Physical wounds heal, she told Sarah, but we need to ensure the emotional wounds don't leave lasting scars. The criminal investigation expanded as more people came forward. James's former secretary revealed he had a history of angry outbursts at work, often throwing objects when deals fell through. His medical records, subpoenaed by the court, showed no attempts to seek help for anger management despite previous incidents. Sarah found unexpected strength in the legal process. Each new revelation confirmed that she had made the right decision in protecting Emma. The system, which so often moves slowly, seemed to recognize the urgency of their situation. As Friday approached, Sarah's lawyer prepared for a major hearing that would determine the long-term legal consequences of James's actions. The evidence was overwhelming, the witnesses were credible, and the community's support was unwavering. "We're going to make sure he faces the full consequences of his actions," Rachel assured Sarah. "No child should ever fear the man who was supposed to become their father." 6 months after the wedding that never was, Sarah and Emma stood in the doorway of their new home. It was smaller than the house they would have shared with James, but it was theirs. A fresh start in a different neighborhood of Millbrook, away from painful memories. "Can I paint my room purple?" Emma asked, her eyes bright with excitement. The bruise on her cheek had long since faded, but the emotional healing had taken time and continued through regular sessions with her therapist. "Of course you can, sweetie," Sarah replied, watching her daughter run up the stairs to explore. The sound of Emma's laughter echoing through their new home was the sweetest music she'd ever heard. The legal proceedings had concluded 2 weeks ago. James had been sentenced to mandatory anger management classes, community service, and placed on probation. The restraining order was made permanent, and he was required to pay significant restitution to cover Emma's therapy costs. His real estate license had been suspended pending a state board investigation into his business practices. The affair with Melissa had cost him more than his marriage. His professional reputation was in ruins. Last Sarah heard, he had moved to another state to start over. The wedding photographer's images had served a different purpose than intended. Instead of capturing happy memories, they had provided crucial evidence in court. She had refused payment for her services and instead donated the money to Safe Haven, the domestic violence organization that had supported Sarah and Emma. Sarah's classroom at Millbrook Elementary looked different now. Besides the usual educational posters, she had added resources about child safety and emotional well-being. Her experience had transformed her teaching, making her more attuned to signs of distress in her students. Emma's recovery had been remarkable. Though she still had occasional nightmares, her therapy sessions had helped her understand that she wasn't responsible for what happened. Her school friends had welcomed her back with handmade cards and endless support. The healing process isn't linear, Emma's therapist had explained during their last session, but Emma's shown incredible resilience. You both have. The community's support hadn't wavered. Sarah's friends had helped them move into the new house, and neighbors they hadn't even met yet had left welcome baskets on their porch. The incident had sparked important conversations about domestic violence and child protection throughout Millbrook. Sarah's parents had been their rock throughout everything. Barbara and John helped with the down payment on the new house, ensuring their daughter and granddaughter could have a fresh start. They never said, "I told you so," about their initial reservations about James. The wedding gifts had all been returned, except for one special item. Lisa had kept the guest book, where dozens of attendees had later added messages of support and love for Sarah and Emma. It became a testament to the community's unity in the face of violence. That evening, as Sarah tucked Emma into her bed in their new home, she noticed something different about her daughter. The fear that had lingered in her eyes for months was finally gone, replaced by the innocent sparkle that every 8-year-old should have. "Mommy," Emma said as Sarah kissed her goodnight, "are you sad that you're not married?" Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "No, sweetheart. I'm happy because we're safe, and we have each other. That's what matters most." "Me too," Emma replied, hugging her stuffed rabbit. "And maybe someday we'll find someone nice who really loves us both." Sarah smiled, touched by her daughter's optimism. "Maybe we will, but for now, we're perfect just as we are." As Sarah walked downstairs, she passed the living room wall where she had hung a new piece of art. It was a simple quote that read, "Sometimes the bravest thing is knowing when to begin again." The failed wedding had taught her valuable lessons about love, courage, and the true meaning of family. What had seemed like the worst day of her life had actually been a turning point, the moment she chose her daughter's safety over societal expectations and false promises. From the kitchen window, Sarah could see their small backyard where Emma had already started planning a garden. New flowers would bloom there in spring, just as she and Emma were blooming into their new life. The night settled peacefully around their new home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but for now, Sarah was content knowing that she and Emma were exactly where they needed to be, safe, loved, and looking forward to their future together.